What's up, guys? It's Lance back with another interview. Today we have Paul Vandersteen, a retired coach. He coached at Neuqua Valley for over 25 years. Now he's a volunteer assistant at North Central College in Naperville. He's the head coach of Naperville Running Company, and he also coaches athletes through Steen's Running Track Club, which is also through Naperville Running Company. He's coaches right now, coach a total of 197 athletes, but he is still the mortal enemy of John O'Malley. So I am pretty excited to have him on here. This is part two. So if you want to see part one, I was really young in that one, but he did have a lot of good stuff to say. So if you want to go give that one a watch, I would definitely suggest it. But Paul, how's your day been so far today?
Going great. Can't complain. Uh, I want to say I'm on vacation, but I'm permanently on vacation now, right?
Hey, that's not a bad thing. You can't complain.
No, not at all.
So looking back at your experiences at Equal Valley High School, what were some of the flaws that you think you did with some of your training?
Some of the flaws.
Yes.
Uh, well, I mean, when I started, it was in 1997, and Neuqua Valley opened with just freshmen, sophomores, right? And I guess I was smart enough to know that I was not that smart. Um, so uh, my thought was, okay, if we're going to be successful, I need to go look and study programs that are. And so one of the first things I did was call up, Joe Newton at York. Won at that time, I don't know, like 21 state championships or whatever the case may be. Legendary coach in the state of Illinois. And I I went to his he welcomed me with open arms. I went to his practice, and, he was very giving. He gave me, preseason booklets, postseason booklets, answered all my questions, shared lots of insights, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I, got basically his workouts weren't a secret. He even had a book published with all his workouts. So I started the program with a lot of those workouts. And, after about 3 or 4 years and just some more research on my end, et cetera, and more education, getting a little more background information on what I think should work. Uh, I quickly, not, I didn't abandon all of those workouts, but many of them I did. For example, one of them was 25 times 400. And I still think that has a place. I mean, the old saying, there's many ways to skin a cat. And like Hinsdale Central still uses 25 times 400 with Noah Lawrence, being a York graduate and bringing that to Hinsdale Central. And it works for them. I mean, they've been very successful.
Yeah.
But it didn't really work for us. I moved more towards an aerobic model. And so I would say the biggest flaw that probably I had was too many intervals. And it was guys like Dan Iverson and Jim Spivey and others that kind of convinced me that you know going with intervals all the time. And what I mean by intervals is race pace uh, repetitions with equal amount of rest, right? So an interval would be 5 times 1200 with 3 minutes rest or 3.5 minutes rest, and you're going at you're going full bore, right? You're going at 3 mile or 5K race pace, and those workouts take a lot out of athletes, a lot out of them. And what I found was, um, after going to a clinic put on by Dave Racy and Tom Razzo at North Central College. I'll never forget it. I think the guy was from South Dakota. Fitzpatrick. I can't remember his name, but I think I got that name wrong. But he uses phrase called moderation and consistency, and so that's the premise by which I operated off of. Was I thought, well, if an athlete can't recover from a really hard workout like 5 times 1200 with 3.5 minutes rest, but school and sleep and everything else, then I better be a little bit more moderate with our approach. And so that's kind of where we went. I would tell my athletes, when you finish a workout, you should feel like you could do one or two more of those reps. And that was very foreign. I would actually chew on my guys for going too hard. Uh, like for example, I prescribe 8 times 1200 at threshold pace, and after 5, they'd be like, "Coach, I can't do anymore." And I'd yell at them because they did them too hard. But after a while, when I say yell at them, I just raised my voice a little bit, but
Yeah.
they finally figured it out, and the formula worked. And what I later found out is then, Tin Man put with his research at UW La Crosse, did, CV is what we were doing. We were doing CV workouts without even knowing what the heck that was. It was just intuitively, that's what I discovered that worked for us.
Okay. So when you said like you had these workouts, like a lot of workouts that we do is like tempo and threshold, where we are very strict with our paces. Was
Mhm.
was when you were very strict with and got upset with those paces, was it only those threshold and tempo type workouts, or was it literally every workout?
It really was just those,
Okay.
because when you do a VO2 max workout, I suppose, we always use the North Central mantra of ABC always be closing,
Yeah.
so that's our philosophy in every workout. So I guess I would, be disappointed in an athlete that approached a workout no matter what it was, and wasn't finishing strong, right? So, you know, they sometimes would do, an interval, and they'd go way too slow in the first one, and I'm like, oh well, now you know what the pace is, and sometimes, uh, doing interval workouts or doing something high intensity, uh, coming right after school, and the kids are tired, and et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes they're not right in the right mindset yet
Yeah.
to really tune into that pace, and so sometimes it takes an interval to do it. I actually also use that as a lesson of like, now think about that before a race. You know, are you really properly warmed up and ready to go? Um, by just doing a mile jog and some active warm up. You probably need to do a 200 or 300 meter at race pace, and then recover for 4 or 5 minutes and then start the workout. So I always just had the guys warm up on their own. A lot of times they just do some strides, right? But then when they do just some short strides and the first interval didn't go well, I'd be like, hey, maybe you want to increase the distance on those strides so that you really get that motor running before that workout.
Okay. So I'm gonna kind of flip the question. What were some of the things that you think you did well in your high school coaching career?
It was definitely an aerobic focus.
Okay.
You know, now that I've always been very transparent with everything that we've done, even when I was coaching at Equal Valley. But I think the biggest mistake most coaches make is they don't do enough miles.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's not the mileage that hurts kids; it's the intensity. Um, I'm, you know, doing 3 interval workouts a week and racing a 5K or a 3 mile on the weekends. That's how you get hurt. That's how that's how you get burned out per se. It's not the mileage. Uh, and by the way, uh, excuse my language, but the crap that people tout about, Joe Newton burning his athletes out, that's a bunch of baloney.
Yeah.
Or anybody that does a lot of miles. Oh, they look at them go to college, they get burned out. No, you go run in college and run D1, it's extremely difficult to make the big time. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're a 9, 10 2 miler and running D1, if you're at a high level D1, well, that's not even going to make it. They're not even going to recruit you these days. But
Yeah.
even mid level D1s, 9, 10 is, unless you improve from that, uh, you're probably not going to be varsity. So, as Chris Derrick used to say, there's a big difference between 8:45 and 9:10 for 2 miles. And he's right. There's a big difference between 14:25 and 13:55 at Detweiler, right?
Yeah.
Huge difference. One of them is elite D1, the other one's borderline, you know, contributing to D1.
Yeah. You're 100% right on that. And I think that like what Sean Brosnan says about like 420 isn't fast. I mean, he's genuinely right. Look at all these college kids. Like it's a reason, and everyone goes out at Sean for saying, "Hey, my kid's running this." Like you're downgrading him. It's not what he's trying to do. He's just trying to change the mindset of the athletes. Like if you
Hmm.
think it's slow, obviously you're going to strive for more, and you're not really going to be as satisfied with running 420 because it's simply not going to put you at where you want to be. Like if you're a true runner, like it's not going to get you to where you think you should be at in order to be able to run here or here, wherever that may be, right?
Mhm.
So I think that a lot of people misinterpret what he's trying to do with it and get at it with him. But I do love what you're saying there. I think that's really good stuff, honestly. And like my favorite point, what you made is you're 100% correct. Miles don't hurt the kids, it's the intensity. My favorite quote, shout out to my friend Michael Mariano. He says there's no such thing as overtraining, it's just under recovering, which is 100% right.
Mhm.
And it's just build and repair. My strength teacher says that all the time. And
Yeah.
he's a pretty smart guy, I would say. But going into our my next topic here, what are some of the things that you have valued more since you retired?
Well, um, well, it has to be time with my family. And I tell you, I married a very smart woman, and most people don't realize this because I would show up at track meets and watch maybe the 2 mile relay and the 2 mile, and then I would escape and back to my family, etc. But I didn't coach track and field at Neuqua Valley for a good 15, 18 years. It was only when Coach Shinoda's kids he coached Shinoda, Jamie Shinoda, has been an assistant since 2000 or 2001 or whatever it was. Um, it wasn't until he coached track and field. It was assistant cross country, and then was the distance coach in track and field, and he's now the head coach at Neuqua Valley. He took my spot, and deservedly so. And when his kids got to be 5, 8 years old, whatever, they started getting involved in activities, and then that's when my kids were off to college, etc. So then now I wasn't needed at home as much. But get back to my point, my wife put her foot down when I started in Equa Valley. And she's like, "You're coaching one sport. You choose between cross country and track." And I argued with her. I'm like, how can I build a program if I'm not coaching year round? And she goes, "I don't care." And good for her. So I coached just cross country and helped organize the winter training program, and I stayed in touch with the athletes. I always, saw them in the hallways and asked how they're doing. I never went to practices though. I just stayed away from practice. I felt, Coach Shinoda needed that space and that independence to do what he needed to do. But I would go to meets and I would hang out with Coach Shinoda and Coach Kennedy and Ragusa and Ricka and all those guys, and it was fun because I had no responsibilities. I just go and show up and watch, which was great. And then my last 8 or 9 years, I think it was 2015, is when I started coaching again on year round. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it illustrates the point that you know um, head coaches are figureheads in terms of names and recognizability or whatever it is. But it really, if you don't have a great team around you, a support system around you, there's no way you're going to succeed. And I was so lucky at Neuqua Valley. Um, you know, I have had Coach Rossi, Coach Kennedy, and Coach Shinoda at my side, and consistently since 2007, all those guys together. I mean, we've been together as a coaching unit for many years. Uh, I remember Dave Jackson sharing with me at Hinsdale South how that coaching staff was together for that long, and how they would do things together, and just really get along. And I was very envious of that. And then here I am 25 years later, being fortunate to have the same situation. So um, been very lucky to have that support crew.
I think that's awesome to have, especially as a when I was blessed to have you let me come crash your team camp for those few days. I when I was up there with you guys, obviously you always sit in that little area where all the couches were and just talk to each other. I don't think I ever came up there once and you guys were talking about running. And
Right.
so I think that's a good thing that you have. Like it's not, hey, we're just coaching with each other. We are genuine friends and we have this relationship where it's not just running. Like I think one of the times you guys were arguing something about superheroes or something like that. Like I
That'd
feel
be
like that
Shinoda.
I think
Yeah.
that's one I remember. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I think that what you built at Neek was definitely gonna help last for a long time because you do have some younger coaches on on that group there. And so like Coach Janota, he's going to do a great job taking over for you. And
He already has.
he
Yep.
already has, you're right. And even the rest of the coaches down the line, like what you've helped start at Nico Valley, I think will just continue to carry on. And I think that they will find success for a long time to come.
Yeah, well, I believe that is the case. I mean, you're gonna get ebbs and flows in terms of talent level coming in, but
Yeah.
they actually increased the numbers after I retired. I think we were down to like 75, 80 guys. I don't remember the last time we were below 100, and now I think they were right at 100 or a little above this year. So, they did a nice job of really being inclusive and including a lot of kids and accepting their differences, et cetera. And we can't keep those numbers in track and field from the distance perspective just because we have so many kids that come out. I mean, one year we had 270 guys go out for track and field at Neuqua Valley. It
Holy
was
crap.
insane. Yeah, and we cut it down to God. I think we cut it down to like 180 or something like that, and it was still too many, especially when it came to indoors, right? And
Yeah.
people stopped inviting us to come to meets because we would clog up the track. Uh, so so now I think Coach Kennedy, and I and Coach Shinoda, all of us have kind of decided like 130 is kind of a magical number. It's kind of a number that we can manage. And so that's kind of the premise by which we operate off of. So yeah, believe it or not, we have time standards to make our track and field team.
That's actually pretty cool, I can't lie. I do think it's, a little funny how you have 270 kids on your track team. That is literally over half of my school on your track team.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, there's a big difference between 1A and 3A. Um, but going into my next kind of topic here, what are some of the things that you maybe value less now that you've kind of had a year to reflect, like, "Hey, why did I emphasize on this so much?" Or what are your thoughts on, high school coaching now that you're in a different situation in college? Or what's kind of
Yeah,
your
I've been saying this to some of the coaches that I've run into, obviously O'Malley, Sipple, and your dad being three of my best buddies in the coaching world. And I said to them, I don't know, a month or two ago, I said, going to clinics is great. I mean, in fact, as you know, I'm going with your dad and O'Malley to Boulder Running Clinic next week, and which is an amazing clinic, by the way. Anybody gets an opportunity to go out there. Coach Iverson's out there every year. I mean, a lot of Illinois coaches have gone out there. Well, anyway, um, so I'm not diminishing clinics. They're great, but nothing replaces going to somebody else's practice.
Okay.
And I I, I tell you what I did when I started in Equa Valley and went to York's practice. I carried a lot of those things I saw in that one practice back to Nequa Valley. The handshake was number one. Uh, the memorable moments, which I shared with Downers Grove North and Plainfield North this year in terms of challenging them to do this. Uh, Document those moments. In the 2009 and 2007 teams were inducted into our Neuqua Valley Hall of Fame state championship teams, and they came back, and I just remember the conversations. None of it revolved around winning the state championship. It all revolved around those memorable moments, right? Uh, they pick up a postseason booklet, and the first thing I have in our postseason booklet are those memorable moments, and which, by the way, I have to edit some of those because some of them would get me in trouble. But uh, or I have to tweak the language a little bit. Well, anyway, but the athletes know what's going on, and those are the moments that they treasure, right? 30 years from now, you're not going to remember necessarily your places and times. You will on some races, but a lot of them you're going to go, "What? What did I run there? I don't remember." But you will remember, you know, the funny things that happened at practice and the good times you had with your friends. Uh, so back to your original point, I guess, um, I value the culture, more so than I ever did even when I was at Neuqua Valley, and I knew, like someone like, John Sipple or O'Malley and your dad understand this, that culture is critical.
Yeah.
Like Iverson understands this at Naples North. Culture is absolutely critical, but it's hard to put your thumb on it. It's hard to when you go to a clinic and you talk about it, people aren't interested really much. They really want to know about your workouts and your system. fact, in 2008, I was invited to speak at the ITCA clinic, and I talked about after we won the state and national championship in 2007. I went to the clinic and I spoke about the culture and how critical that was to our success. And I was contacted the following year, and they said, "Yeah, the feedback on your presentation was, yeah, that's all fine, but they want to know what your workouts are." I'm like, "Oh, you morons! It's not that workouts. As long as you are aerobic based in cross country, track is not as important, but in cross country, as long as it's more aerobic based, it doesn't really matter what the workouts are. It's the culture that you establish. And a prime example of this is Plainfield North and Plainfield South. I mean, you see two programs there, and I know Andy Dirks very well and Jason Crow, et cetera. But and Andy, I got a firsthand look at it this year in terms of going to their practice and watching. And man, he understands that, and
Yeah.
the extra things that Andy Dirks does or Dan Iverson does, you would not believe. I don't know how Iverson does it. He's a droid like John Sipple. I mean, I he just goes and goes and goes and does all these cool things with his girls, and um, those thematic practices and the trail running they do up in Michigan and the overnight stuff they do. That takes a lot of time and energy, but it pays dividends. Like you mentioned, our Oregon camp in Oregon, Illinois, uh, it's huge for our culture, and it's something that I don't think could ever be replaced by anything else. I think any program that really wants to get off the ground should do at least a retreat, if not an overnight scenario somewhere where you get the athletes away and get them focused on what they want to accomplish, during the summer and fall.
There is no magic workout. Like I will say that right now. Like me and my dad were having a conversation maybe yesterday or a couple days ago. Like we were saying there was a lot of coaches that would have done things to get Sean's training like when they were at their peak. Like they weren't doing anything insane. Like they were
Yeah.
running 60, 70, 80-mile weeks, which is necessary to be at that level, right? And obviously they have a little bit more elevation mixed within that. And obviously they have some workouts, but they're nothing insane workouts. Like we have probably done very similar workouts to touch up on the same points to get the same things out of it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people overlook. Like they think it's just training, 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 training. But in reality, your kids are going to run faster when they enjoy it more, right? So I mean, it's just I 100% agree with you on your point. And I actually really like that point. I had honestly never that wasn't the answer I was expecting out of you. But I do really like that point, and it honestly was, I think, a great point to set into viewers' minds. And I do have another question here for you. When you were at these practices, what was one of your biggest takeaway from Dirksey's practice? Because I had the blessing of being able to go running to the EIU running camp, and
Hmm.
he was one of the talkers there, and a bunch of his kids came down as well, and he talked about the PNXE family and team culture throughout his entire speech and how important it was to him. And those
Yeah.
Plainfield North kids, they all it was wild. It was literally like I was watching a family. And
Yeah.
I think they do a great job touching up on it. But what was the biggest thing that you took out of his practice?
Well, I think if you know Andy Dirks, the one thing that you quickly realize is that he accepts kids for who they are,
Bingo.
and he genuinely loves kids, and that just comes out uh, just with his. He's just so genuine, and um, he's got discipline, but he's not over disciplined, right? I mean, but went into a room where they do some post running, work, hip mobility, a little bit of core work, whatever they were doing, and he all he had to do was just say, "Hey, you can't really focus on this if you're all talking," and the room got quiet, and they worked on their exercises. It's You can see that things are individualized too. That not everybody does the same thing. He knows he's got differences. He's got some sprinters that are on the team, and just like we did at Nequa Valley, and you can't have the sprinters doing an 8-mile run. They need to focus on enhancing their abilities opposed to doing that aerobic run that's really not going to have much value for them, right? Other than surviving a 3-mile race. So at Nico, what we do is we probably have about 25, 30 sprinters that come out for the team, and the the expectation is they run in 3 races during the fall, and it works, and they have fun. A lot of times they choose to do more, um, you know, and Coach Kennedy has them doing, wickets. He has them doing all out 30s. So, they're working on their speed element, right? And in my even our guys, we do something, quick every day. We don't just do aerobic work. We do strides afterwards. We do, especially in track, we do some all out stuff. So, as long as we do some plyometrics, which enhances and works those fast twitch fibers. So as long as you keep those fast twitch fibers active, it's going to work. But when you get back to your point, you know, you see just the love that these kids have for one another and for their coaching staff, uh, and it's hard to put your thumb on it, but it's there. And I'll share another thing with you from North Central. What I learned is they are very intentional before the practice begins as to what they're going to do that day and why they're going to do it. Uh, and it's at every practice. And on Mondays at North Central, they meet in a classroom and they kind of lay out the week. So the kids get kind of a blueprint as to what's going to happen. And at North Central, it's no secret they do just about the same thing on the same day, which is another thing I think I would change. Um, you know, I think a lot of clinics and things I went to, it, they challenge you to kind of mix things up. Go do a 10-day cycle, do a 14-day cycle, don't just do a 7-day cycle, blah, blah, blah. But I think high school kids and college, from what I discovered, is they need consistency. They need to know kind of, okay, on this day, this is what we're going to do. Um, and I think if I were to do it again, I think I used to drive Coach Shinoda nuts because I would change things all the time. But I think I would go to more of a systematic approach. Like Mondays, we're doing this, Tuesdays, we're doing that, Wednesdays, we're doing this, rather than, you know, changing it up week to week. The other thing I saw at North Central, which was fascinating to me, um, is that of all the practices I attended, I usually attended 3 to 4 a week. Uh, I never ever saw an athlete come late to practice. And the time that they started, let's say you start practice at 3 o'clock, they actually start practice at 2:59. And an athlete is the one that calls the time, not the coach. The athlete says, he yells out time, and everybody gets quiet. And then the meeting starts, and then the coach talks about, Coach Sinnott talks about what they're going to do, and then he, to Coach Sinnott's credit, he gives all the other coaches. There's like 6 or 7 of us that are there, and he gives us all an opportunity to speak. And usually about 3 or 4 of us will say something to the athletes. He gives the athletes an opportunity to speak, and then we get together, put all our hands in the middle, team, head off to practice. The other thing I saw at North Central was really cool, which I really never did at Nequa, is I always shook everybody's hand at the end of practice. But what Coach Sinnott does is they when the whole team's together, they gather all together in a circle, and they talk and discuss what happened at that practice, especially the more intense practices. They kind of bring things to a close, and I thought that was really really neat. And so that's something I think I would, if I were to go back to Nequa or back somewhere else and be in charge somewhere, I would definitely do more circle things. Get the athletes together, looking at them face to face, and doing a little more communication that way.
Oh yeah. So you would mainly just sum that up as you kind of get to know the kids better, maybe? Was that maybe what you say that as?
Um, I always felt I got to know the kids well. I think all of us did. But I think it's some of those intentional things that you do with kids so that your culture is consistent,
Okay.
right? I think that's probably more it than anything else.
Okay. That makes sense. So you kind of touched up on it a little bit, but my next question for you here is what are some of the things that you noticed to be different since you've been at North Central? Obviously, high school and college, it's a big difference. Maybe what are some, excuse me, what are some of the training differences and also team culture, like we touched on that a little bit. You said
Yeah.
balls the meeting and stuff like that.
Well, I touched on all the cultural things. I think, training wise, it's just more, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, in high school, you might do a workout where you do a warm up and then do like a 4 mile threshold run and then a cool down, right? Well, at North Central on Mondays, they do a 4 mile threshold run. They get a 10-minute break to put their spikes or racing flats on, and then they do 4 to 5 times 1 mile repeats at VO2 max pace. and then, and then put their trainers back on and run back to another mile, mile and a half back to school. So, it's like double what you would see in high school, right? Um, at North Central on Wednesdays, it's threefold. It's a threshold run. It's Blackwell Hills or Rotary Hills, depending on which group you're in, and then it's a fartlek after that. So it's very very aerobic based. And they've Al Carius and Frank Grammaroso and the gang have fine tuned that over the years, and it works for them. Right? There's not a more successful cross country program in the country, Division One, two, or three, that they are it.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why they are it. It's culture and it's aerobic based work.
Yeah, I honestly like I've looked at some of their stuff. I'm getting to that point where my my recruiting process may start here soon. And I've kind of looked at some of their stuff and like the numbers that they have just consistently put up since even the 90s are just
Mhm.
unreal. Like you say that they're the most successful program regardless of division, and you are absolutely correct. Like I don't think there's anyone even close to being able to compete with them. And just the consistency, some might say that's key. The consistency of being able to just finish well every single year. And
Mhm.
it's survival of the fittest up there. And it's just awesome to watch these dedicated guys who just love to be out there find success in the sport. And then even if they feel that their time in Division Three is over, like there's been a few guys that has transferred out and go on to bigger schools, which has been awesome to see. And sometimes they find success. And I think that's pretty awesome to see out of a small college. I mean, that we know pretty well.
Yeah, I don't know a lot of people realize how competitive Division Three is.
Yeah.
It's it is no joke. No, of course D1 is at the top. There's no ignoring that. But
Yeah.
I mean, D3 is super competitive. I mean, if you're a 9 flat 2 miler, 9-10 2 miler, you're not going to go into D3 and you just all of a sudden be top 10 in all the races. Guess again. You're going to have to put the work in to climb up to that level. Um, and what's really cool at North Central is they've gotten some guys that are 9:45 2 milers, that come there and you know put in the work and become all Americans and get down to a level where they're elite. And it's fun to watch. Someone like a Drew Geeman or a James McGlashan, and there are numerous guys there you know, that have that have contributed. It's really fun to see someone like a BJ Sorg who, was a 9/11 2 miler at Plainfield South, and he loves it at North Central and is just flourished in that aerobic based training because it's very similar to what Plainfield South did. Well, you know, one of their assistant coaches is is a North Central grad. So those guys, it's all in the family there. It really is. So, and then you got Max Saventi, who, was third at nationals this year. He's a Hershey grad.
Yeah.
So we're starting North Central starting to get these guys not just from Class A and AA schools. We're getting guys from some of these AAA schools now in Illinois, which is we're very fortunate to have that.
So something kind of funny. I know you know, but I figured I'd tell it anyway. The coach from Plainfield South that you said went to North Central actually went to St. Joe in my high
Yeah.
school,
Right.
and if every now and then we'll see him on runs around here. So I think that's pretty cool. So going into kind of my next topic, we're gonna flip flop it. What are some of the things that you notice kind of are the same? I mean, you're going from I mean, honestly, a lot different programs. And what are some of the things that you notice maybe that are the same from high school to college?
Um, well, I don't know. The same. Uh, well, obviously, from from my own personal experience,
Yeah, yeah.
from Neuqua Valley to college. Well, again, I go back to I'm an aerobic focus. What I've seen at North Central, it's the focus on culture. It's the we've said this before. It's the paying attention to what's going on in an athlete's life, not just I always tell my runners, running should be a part of your life, not be your life,
Yeah.
right? And I think that same philosophy carries over at North Central. Uh, it's hard to put. I don't know. There's a lot of the obvious things are the same, right? Peer to peer acknowledgement or recognition is important. We know we do a lot of that. Acknowledging improvement over places and times in terms of being first, I think is really important. At Neuqua Valley, we would acknowledge our, one year we had 167 guys on the team, and we would sometimes I think the 167th guy got more attention than the first guy, just because that person would improve a lot more. um, and sometimes just really run a great race or gutsy race for them. And I think it was important to acknowledge that. We'd keep track of how much students improve from year to year, and I think that's important to acknowledge. And North Central does that. So they give out in North Central, they give out these pins, and the pins are not performance based. They're based on what the athlete does to contribute to the program and, or contribute to one another. And I think that's, the seniors kind of give those pins out. And we would do that in Equa Valley too. We would, give out, I always wore Ray-Ban sunglasses. And what people don't know is at one point, um, I had I was nearsighted. I couldn't see far away. So it would be at track meets and I'd be wearing these Ray-Bans and they were prescription. So the lights, the sun would go down, but the lights would come on the stadium and I continue to wear the Ray-Bans so I could see. But then later on, my eyes shrunk, getting older here, and now I've got 2010 vision. It's so bizarre. So there's one advantage to getting older, at least in my case. So I don't know if I answered your question very well, but um, you know, it's those kinds of acknowledgments that everybody matters. I think to me, you know, I was very, I guess I don't know how to phrase it. Uh, I, I don't know how to say this, but I, I was not impressed, but I was it was reinforced that what we were doing at Nico was the right thing to do. By really acknowledging athletes for who they are and what they do to contribute to the program. At North Central and at Neuqua Valley, we talked about the 167th guy, and at North Central we had 58 guys. That the 58th guy mattered just as much as the number one guy. In fact, at North Central, they had an entire busload of athletes that came out to Pennsylvania. It was like an 18-hour bus ride where they had to stay in a hotel and then pick up and go. And they all showed up to cheer on, 10 guys make the roster in college. And the same at Neuqua Valley. We'd have a separate bus that would bring all of our athletes down to the state meet on Saturday morning. I just remember back in the day watching York, right, with their band and everybody else. I think that synergy is really, really important. And it because cross country is a family, and if you only have like 10 guys on the team, that's tougher because, as you know, it's a big world out there, and not a lot of people acknowledge or recognize cross country runners in terms of
Yeah.
what they're doing. So that the acknowledgement has to come from within. You can't rely upon external motivation. It has to be intrinsic. It has to come from within. Otherwise, you're just not going to be successful.
Absolutely. Like one of my things that I laugh about is our school, they do morning announcements for like every sport. but like I don't even think we got announced for cross country this year. So I got our state meet or anything. So I thought that was pretty funny. But
Yeah.
um yeah, I mean runners, they're human. They're most definitely human. Um you can reach out to a lot of those guys that you think are like, oh, no way they'll answer, right? And majority of the time they will. Um,
Hmm.
it's not like these guys are like LeBron James where you're just going to send their DMs for literally ever, right? Like
Right.
sometimes they might reply. Like
Yep.
they get excited when they get recognized because I mean they're runners. Who's going to be like, that's my guy that runs? There's not very many people that are going to do that. So I mean, having that, it's pretty awesome. I mean, it's pretty easy to reach out to some of these guys. So you get to have some pretty cool conversations with some really cool people
Hmm.
like you. Like I'm blessed to be able to reach out to you and sometimes you'll respond, you know?
I always respond.
No, you
I
are
I
good.
sometimes think you're, my old principal because you're both named Lance. So I have both of you as Lance in my phone. I'm like, "Which Lance is this?"
Take a gamble. Take a
Yeah.
gamble.
Is it Dr.
Steen,
Fuhrer or is it Lance Retz?
Steen, I want you back at school. I'm just gonna text you that one day and you're
It'll probably throw me for a loop.
but you kind of talked about some of the mental side, like mentality as a runner. What are some of the things that you noticed for your little bit of time at North Central compared to Nequa? Like, what are some of the athletes' thoughts that you have noticed?
Well, I mean, the guys that are consistent, right? That are, uh, I can't remember the quote that Al Carius uses, but they repeat it a lot. I should know it, but something of like, uh, you can be a very talented runner, but if you're not motivated, they're just not going to be there in the end.
Yeah,
It you have to be motivated. You can't coach an unmotivated runner. Um, they have to have that burning desire to get better, right? And you really can't coach that. You can reinforce, and sometimes there's a switch that's made. I've seen athletes that didn't really care, and then all of a sudden they realize that they're important to the team, and then a switch goes off, and they're all in. Uh, and I saw that at North Central. I saw that at Nequa Valley. So I don't ever give up hope. Uh, but the athlete has to have that burning desire, right? And sometimes there are forces in their lives that don't allow that burning desire to come to the surface. Uh, you know, we had an athlete at Nequa Valley named Alex Magus who, after his freshman year, he quit. He just quit the team. And I would see him in the hallway. Hey, Alex, how you doing? I didn't take any offense to it. He just didn't want to run anymore. And then his junior year, he comes back out for the team, and he grew like 8 inches and got faster and stronger, etc. He ended up being on our 4x4 team that placed fifth and enabled us to win a state championship in 2021. I mean, it was unbelievable. How sometimes those things work out. And, you know, there's some guys at North Central that they weren't much as a freshman or sophomore, but then, you know, things clicked. Sometimes it's injuries, right? Sometimes it's guys just can't get consistent because they keep getting hurt. And, after a while, sometimes that just clicks and they stay healthy, like a Jackson Jett for us or a Dave Wing who didn't contribute to their senior year because they just could not get the ball rolling. But finally, they grew and got more mature and they got stronger. And finally, they were able to do the work consistently and stay healthy. And then that made all the difference in the world when it came to, the state meeting in cross country.
so essentially what you're saying is that what you've noticed at North Central is really that anyone can be good. Is that what kind of I picking up?
Well, I think, and I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day. It's you think you know, but you don't know.
Okay.
There is no, I don't care. There's no coach out there that can tell you how good an athlete is going to be their freshman year.
Okay.
Um, and you talk to any high school coach that's been around for a while, and they'll, you go talk to a Noah Lawrence or a Chris Quick or anybody of those, and they will point out numerous examples of guys that were not very good for a long time, and then all of a sudden, bam. Testosterone does magical wonders. Chris Derrick's the prime example, right? I mean, 1814 or 1824 as a freshman, you know, uh, and then 1502 as a sophomore, 1422 as a junior, and 1351 as a 1350 point whatever. I don't know what he ran. He kept getting faster, and you know it, that's a pretty unique situation. Most people don't realize Chris was young for his grade too. Just like Zach Close, Nico's number one guy this year ran 1422. Um, Zach won't turn 18 until August, right? So he's a 17-year-old senior. Chris was a 16-year-old senior till the middle of October.
Whoa,
Uh,
what?
yeah. So think about that. Chris Derrick did not turn 18 until middle of October his freshman year at Stanford, and then placed top 10. I think he finished seventh as a freshman, as a month and a half old 18-year-old.
That's
Yeah,
actually wow.
yeah. And I don't know, most people don't know this. Chris Derrick is one of the few athletes that placed top 10 in the NCAAs all 4 years. That's a rare feat, a rare feat. Yeah. That was Chris's secret, was consistency. I mean, he didn't take shortcuts. He always did the workout to completion. And there were times I argued with him in terms of completing a workout because the conditions weren't favorable for it, but he insisted. I remember a workout at Blackwell one year. I mean, it had to be 95 degrees, and I had this monster workout plan that without the heat took like an hour and 45 minutes. And we're at the hour 45 minute mark, and we still have about a fifth of the workout to go. And I'm like, Chris, I go, this is insane. I go, we got to stop. He's like, nope, we're going. And he's like, I'll just drink some more water. So, and about three guys went with him. As long as they drank and took more breaks, I guess I was okay with it. But they were insistent; they were going to finish that stinking workout, and that was huge for our culture because when he came along, guys stopped taking shortcuts. They stopped making excuses, and they completed everything that I asked them to do, and he was consistent about it. In high school, Chris Derrick never got hurt. There's one small example where he got a minor. He was training for Foot Locker his junior year, and he got on the track with racing flats or spikes, and he tweaked the outside of his foot, the tendon on the outside of his foot, so it cost him a week. So I think at Foot Locker's junior year, I can't remember. I think it was like a 12th or 11th or something like that. He didn't make top 10 because he had to lay off a week. But other than that, he never missed a day in high school.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
actually awesome. Like the mental strength to have for all that stuff and just being able to have the hammer and hammer and hammer. I mean, we even saw that in his Bowerman days. Like he was
Mhm.
successful at the professional level.
Yep.
Like it's not like he turned out to be a nobody. I mean,
Yeah, and he had fluke things happen to him, right, as a professional. I mean, he was running in Naperville and stepped off a curb and cranked his ankle, and that was the beginning, unfortunately, of his issues with his ankles and his feet. Um, then, he got a concussion coming off an elliptigo. He crashed an elliptigo. Luckily, he had his helmet on. He'd be dead if he didn't have his helmet on. Uh, and then got in pretty good shape, and Schumacher sent him up to Detroit for this road race, and he's in a pack in this. I think it was a 10-mile road race, or it was a USATF championships or something. And there was a pothole, and he didn't see the pothole because he was in the pack, and he cranked his ankle in the pothole. So I mean, he just had these fluke things happen to him that really derailed his professional career. But I mean, still, he had an amazing profession. For a while there, he held the American record for the 3,000 indoors. American-born citizen anyway. He,
yeah,
won three national championships in cross country professionally. I mean, he accomplished some great things. Don't get me wrong, but fourth and fifth in the Olympic trials. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at.
that absolutely. Absolutely. So for your 25-year experience, kind of staying on the high school topic, what did you notice most what are your top three things that high school kids mess up commonly? Not coaches, athletes.
Sleep is number one.
Bingo. I like that. I'm not great.
Definitely number one. Um, if I always get a kick out of kids that worry about their spikes. Oh, I need to change my spikes. They're not, they're dull. I raced twice in them, and I'm like, oh my god, how much did you sleep last night? 6 hours. I'm like, you're worried about changing a spike, and you didn't sleep the amount that you were supposed to, because you're up playing video games. Worry about your sleep rather than your spike. It just boggles my mind in terms of the perception of teenagers on what's going to matter, right? And we spent a lot of time sharing. Coach Kennedy and I spent a lot of time sharing the research on how critical sleep is. In fact, I even created a chart that's in Jay Johnson's book. Uh, you know, Consistency is key. That you know tells you what time you go to bed and what time you get up, and I rate it. Good, bad, awful, blah blah blah. Uh, I would say number two is consistency. Uh, Number two would be, high school athletes too often make excuses. I'm going to take this day off. I don't need to run that day. I need to, I need lots of rest between seasons. So I'm going to, take 3 weeks off. Uh, I always told our athletes, you know, take a couple weeks and just run when you feel like it. But don't necessarily take those 2 or 3 weeks completely off, unless you're just completely destroyed in terms of fatigue or an injury or whatever. Then there is a time and place where maybe some complete time off is appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, yep. And then I would say number three would be nutrition. Uh, I always tell our athletes, eat on the exterior of the grocery store, right? If you can avoid those processed foods, and that's for your general health, period. Stay away from the crackers and the chips and the cookies and in the cereals and, well, most cereals anyway. But, eat from the exterior of the grocery store. Eat the vegetables and the fruits and the lean meats and the dairy, etc. That's where you're going to get your whole wheat products. That's where you're going to get your nutrition.
So honestly, all of those things kind of go hand in hand. Like they all lead to something else, right? It's all just here's this, this, and this will lead to this. Like it's essentially an addition problem, like a math problem.
It is. You're right.
Like all those lead to something else. More sleep equals more running that you can do, more running that you can do, bigger base you have, bigger base, better workouts, better training, block, and better season, right? Like
Yeah.
all lead to something else. And I think that that's honestly, I mean, I'm not saying I'm good with sleep. I did horrible during my break. I can't lie to you. And I definitely need to do better once I come back here. And nutrition, I mean, it's Christmas season. Peanut M&Ms are one of the best things that we put on this planet. Um, I'm we got some of them, so I definitely make sure I get my fair share of peanut M&Ms in. But taking everything, all the small things, those are for something bigger, right? It's like
Yep.
a puzzle. Each puzzle piece will create the picture. And
Yep.
um, that's what I think a lot of people skip is the little things. I do. I'm not saying I'm good at all, but
Yeah.
each athlete has their own thing. And I think that one of the points that you were trying to cover there was those small things. Like sleep, is it small? I mean, not really, but you kind of understand what I'm saying. Like it can
Yeah.
easily be missed.
Yep.
And go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I would say too though, like by the way, if you're gonna eat a candy, peanut M&Ms is actually one of the better ones, just because of the protein that you're gonna get from the nuts inside. But uh, it's sometimes you can go over the top too, right? You can go to the extreme. You know, uh, it's important that there's balance, right? Again, running should be a part of your life, not be your life. And if you're constantly, your whole life is dictated by I can't do this, I can't do that, then after a while there's that fatigue that sets in terms of are you really enjoying the running? Are you enjoying the whole process? So there needs to be some balance there. I mean, over vacation with you, yeah, you're going to bed later, but I bet you're sleeping in later too,
Yep,
right?
almost.
So it's just your cycle has changed. You're just shifting everything. Obviously, when school starts, that you're gonna have to shift back. Uh, by we always tell our athletes, do that like on Friday or Saturday before you start back to school, because if you wait till Monday, Monday, um, wow, that's a real shock to your system, right? So if you can kind of itch that back Friday and Saturday and Sunday, then it won't be so stressful on you. I would also say that um, procrastination is a huge key for high school kids.
Yeah.
You know, all of the research you read Steve Magnus or Brad Stuhlberg, whatever, and all that research they've done on, especially Brad Stuhlberg, on stress outside of running and what it does to your running. And they've done that research and it shows. I mean, when you have, you know, 3 exams on a day, and or you broke up with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever the case may be, and that stress can have a huge impact on your running. So that's why I think it's important that coaches get to know their runners, uh, get to know what their daily life is like, what are their daily stresses. Our mom and dad going through a divorce, or has something happened health wise with one of your family members, et cetera. All those things have an impact on what decisions you're going to make in terms of the workouts and what the athlete should be doing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I definitely was very stressed during my final exams. I tried to nail those in this year. I think I did a pretty good job. I did good on all but one of them, but there was one of them where I legit threw up in the bathroom afterwards because I was so nervous.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm terrible at chemistry, and
Yeah.
I was really nervous for it, and I got done afterwards like, oh my gosh, I did terrible. I didn't do bad. I think I got like a 79 or something like that. I finished with like an 88 in the class, so I was really happy with it. But I don't. I'll tell you what, it wasn't worth throwing up in the bathroom, and it didn't affect my run later that day. So it was all good. But yeah, I would say like kind of being in the high school, like it's talked about like when you're a little bit younger. But I remember I was one of the experiences that I've had in my life is that I got to help manage our high school basketball team when I was in like sixth grade or something like that. And I remember one of the basketball players told me, when you get to high school, the biggest thing you need to do, not procrastinate. And I remember exactly where he told me that, who told me
Mhm.
that, and do I listen to it? Sometimes,
Yeah.
but um, I think
Guess what, especially with honors students, guess what the most stressful time of the year is?
finals.
No, it's actually not, because they're usually fairly prepared, because they've done all the work and they've done what they're supposed to do. They're honors students, right? So they've kept up with things. It's like October 30, 31st, not because of Halloween, because November 1st, this is for seniors. November 1st is the college application deadline.
Oh,
So they procrastinate and they don't write their essays. They don't fill out the applications till the last minute. So now they're doing that in addition to all of their AP and honors work, right?
hmm.
So Coach Kennedy, our head track and field coach, he actually has set up a time in August where we bring the students in before school starts and sits them in a computer lab and has them start their college applications, start writing their essays.
That's smart.
And Rossi and Janota are English teachers, right? So they share those essays with those coaches, and we get a jump start on that, because sometimes all it takes is getting started,
Yeah.
and the procrastination is a lot of times just getting the foot out the door, so to speak.
I honestly think with some things, like if I start it, it just feels weird not to finish it. Like
Hmm.
that's the way I think I am with some things. And so I think, yeah, like starting it is better than literally never touching it or even having a thought about it, right? It at
Right.
least puts the thought in your head, hey, I gotta get this done. So I
Yes.
actually really like that idea. I don't think I would have never guessed it was October 30th and 31st, or guessed that I've never heard of any program doing that. Uh,
Yeah. And that's just for the high level schools. They have that November 1st deadline, so there are different deadlines for various schools, but for a lot of the high end academic schools, November 1st is a common deadline,
I got you.
especially for like, I think um, early decision stuff. I don't know. It is what it is.
I get you. Well, thank you so much for taking this time out of your evening today. It definitely meant a lot. You definitely had some great questions that I'm really excited to watch this one back and make sure that I get everything that I missed throughout the interview.
Were you not paying attention?
Sorry, coach. Sorry, coach. I see the meatloaf sitting over there behind the screen. It's distracting, right? It's
Yeah.
distracting. But yeah, I also do want to thank Char for letting you come on tonight and also being able to coach again finally for track that one time. I figured I had to say something at some point about her letting me do. You were you were in
Yeah.
timeout for a little bit there.
Yeah. Well, Coach Shinoda had everything set up well for me. It was, and Coach Kennedy, obviously being the head coach, has organizationally. I tell you, there's those two guys, and Coach Rossi. Those three guys are some of the hardest working people that I know,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing is success comes with really hard work,
Yeah.
and sometimes that hard work is at the expense of your family, and so that's where the balance tries to come in, right? It's especially when you got young kids. It's you got to measure what really matters and what doesn't. So your dad knows that.
That is true. The story he likes to tell is that my mom, she would always get mad at him for going to these coaches' houses every weekend. So he put together the clinic that you came down to here.
Yeah.
And I will never forget laying on the couch. I'm about to go to like a trampoline park, and my dad introduces me to you, and I'm like 8 years old. No idea who I'm talking to. Turns out you're a pretty cool guy. Did some pretty cool things in your life. So I think that's just pretty funny. I'm just like, yeah, you're just one of dad's friends. And so
Yep. Yep.
that's a I'll never forget that moment. I do hope you know that.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Impressionable 8-year-old.
Hey man, at least I remember you at all.
Yeah. Guess you should be honored.
No, no, do not go that far. But I am very thankful for you to be able to come on tonight. Like I said, definitely didn't have to do that, but I definitely will enjoy this meatloaf. Now that you're out of here, I can finally focus on what's really important here, which is that food, which is excess grocery store, right? External from the grocery store.
The exterior part of the grocery store, right?
Exterior
So
part.
so avoid the middle.
Avoid the middle.
Yes. Buy food from the exterior.
Got you. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Coach.
All right. See you later, Lance.